Good morning, and welcome to the latest in our series of FT Digital Dialogues. Our topic today is energy transformation and how to drive a green recovery. At a time when coronavirus has upended the global economy and changed everyday life, the energy systems that power the world are also at a moment of profound transformation. It is my pleasure to be joined today by Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. We will begin with a short presentation from the Director General, who will introduce a new report from IRENA that outlines how the energy transition can be at the center of economic recovery. After the presentation, we'll have a fireside chat, or a digital version of it anyway, and you will also have the chance to ask questions. You can submit your questions at any time by using the Q&A box that you should see at the bottom of your screen. And then we will answer as many as we can in the last 15 minutes or so. You can also download the new IRENA report on their website, and there should be a button at the bottom of your screen that will also allow you to access that report. Some quick housekeeping notes. If you have any technical problems watching this, you can find help in the help section that you'll see on the screen. And you can also tweet with the hashtag FT Digital Dialogues about this event. And at the end, there'll be a short survey in which you're welcome to give your feedback. Shortly, I'd like to hand over to Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA. Francesco is responsible for leading the delivery of IRENA's work program in cooperation with the agency's member states. And prior to that, he was the head of sustainable development at the Italian Ministry of Environment. IRENA, I'm sure many of you are already very familiar with their work. It is the intergovernmental agency for the global energy transformation. It has more than 160 countries that are members of the agency. And its mission is to support countries as they make the transition to sustainable energy. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Francesco for his opening remarks. Francesco, the floor is yours.
Grazie, Leslie. So thank you, Leslie. And thank you also to the Financial Times to allow us to present our report through your screen. And naturally, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone that will be listening to this interview. You know, the energy system is central for our economy and our society. And in these days, governments are preparing their response to the COVID-19 that, due to the tremendous amount of public intervention into the economy, will shape our life in the year to come. So when the government define these measures, we have to think that our energy system still is unfit for the stable, resilient, climate-safe, and just world that we want to live in. It's also, this report is coming to try to link the short-term stimulus package with the medium and long-term perspective of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Agenda. So what was very important for IRENA in its leading role in supporting countries into their move to the energy transition to come at this time with this report. I will try to give you the context. So we say that it's important that the short-term stimulus can go in line with the long-term perspective of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. And so I need, as first slide, to introduce to our work the Global Renewable Outlook that we presented just at the end of April. To make clear that in that report, we envisage three different scenarios. One scenario that is taking into account all the commitments and all the policies the membership put in place, we are planning to put in place in the energy system, and what we call the planet energy scenario. Then we have in the second line in the slides here, you can see how we can reduce more than in the normal in the planet scenario with our transformative scenario to abate more CO2 to be in line with the Paris Agreement. So we are talking about more than 35 reduction of gigaton of CO2 with our transformative scenario. And this is in line with the well below 2 degrees of the Paris Agreement. We also put another option, another scenario for the decarbonization of our energy system in the year from 2050 to 2060, where we go for zero emission. And you can see in the different color here the contribution of renewables in blue. You can see the energy efficiency, and we can see also other contribution coming from the mobility, so the electric vehicles. And you can also find some contribution from the green hydrogen, as you can see, and also from CCUS and CCUS in a manner. So this is the scenario that we have in the global renewable outlook, and we have to be able to link our short-term response to this long-term scenario. And we have to work on reducing the carbon emission, on having in mind the falling of the energy cost, talking about the full energy access, provide for improved energy security with much less fossil fuel in our scenario, improved air quality and or the quality. And what is important to notice that we pay much importance to the job creation of all this scenario and the welfare impact of this scenario. If we go from that framework to the short term, this is what we need to link the short-term response to the medium, as we will see, and then to the long term. We need naturally investment, and our estimate is that we have to double, more or less, the investment in respect of the last 3 years and go for 2 trillion per year, where we have a large investment in energy efficiency, in renewable, in the electrification and in infrastructure. This brings to the our next slide, where we assess what could be the impact of this additional moving to clean energy in terms of jobs and in terms of GDP. And as you can see from the slides, we can be at the end of these 3 years with more than 5,400,000 jobs. Having in mind that we are talking here about additional jobs. So are the jobs that we are creating and also the jobs that we are absorbing from the fossil fuel sector. So say take into account, we will go for 7 million jobs, more or less. Concerning the GDP, our impact at the average in this 3 years will be around 1%. We have to make clear that this has been built confronting our scenario with the planet scenario. So the planet scenario is already absorbing everything the government will do to put our economy more or less where we were in GDPs and wealth. And this naturally cannot be the short-term response, just investment, because investment needs also to be supported by the right policies, and investment has been a part of the transformation of our society that is necessary if we want to go really for a cleaner energy system. So we have to work on the ambition. It's very important, and this in this arena is working, supporting 110 countries on the INDC. We have to work to make the public intervention go only, and also build guidance from principle that we can discuss later, where also the leverage of private money could play an important role. So investment, employment, and that we have to say something about this, but also industry, because we have to work on the value chain, in the supply chain, make more country always possible to get what they need, and so to absorb fully the benefit of moving to a new, cleaner energy system. And this brings us to access. In this stimulus package, we cannot forget that we have hundreds of millions of people that have no access to energy. And this has to be something that we can never forget, because the transition means also working on socioeconomic aspect, is also working on a world that could be more just, less unequal that has been in the past. So we have seen what's going to happen in our proposal in the short term, and we can immediately link this to the medium term, as the Sustainable Development Agenda to 2030 time suggested us. And we can see that for the 2 trillion per year, we have to overcome all the bottleneck and going for 4.9 trillion per year of investment in the periods between now and 2030. So it means that the curve of the investment has been growing, has to grow along the year. And naturally, again, we measure the contribution at 2030 of the switch to a more clean and resilient system. And we got to have 15 million more jobs in our economy. And we can see that from now to 2030, the average GDP contribution will go from 1% to 1.3%. Again, I wish to make clear that this is a number that is adding to what we will get in terms of GDP and jobs with the intervention of the state that will bring our economy more or less where we are there in terms of jobs, in terms of GDP. So this is measuring exactly the heading contribution of going for clean energy. Oops. So this also a slide where we can see the impact and how we can intervene through our policies in the different value chain that you can say here for solar, for offshore wind, for onshore wind and offshore wind. And this could be helpful for government to put in practice all the capacity building and training that could be necessary to move jobs from the old conventional plant to the new idea of a cleaner energy sector. And this also could be guiding government in setting the industrial policies that may fit their path to a clean energy system. So this is what I wanted to say to present shortly the result of our analysis and be ready to answer to your question. But let me say that if going for renewable until some time ago was an option, today is an imperative. So we have to give hopes to our citizens that we are going really to a better world. And to go to a better world means going for a cleaner world, a world that respects nature, that is just and equitable. Thank you. I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesco. That's a really fascinating presentation. And Lots of food for thought there. I'd like to begin by asking a little bit about this moment of recovery that we're in, and if there are parallels that can be drawn with the great financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, in terms of how renewable energy emerged from the financial crisis, and what lessons from that previous crisis should be applied to this current moment.
For me, the most important aspect to underline is that in the 2008 crisis, it was a financial crisis that produced its effect on the economic system. Now it's quite different because we have an healthy crisis that, because of lockdown and everything, has brought an economic crisis that we are trying to face now. So it's very different because the financial system is more or less in good health. So this is the main difference. And we have to be careful in choosing the way to go, that we have to respect the health of the financial system. So we cannot work for investment that are not going to produce immediate result and they build the perspective of the future. Because we cannot reduce the fiscal space that we have at our disposal. So the first lesson that I think has to be having in mind, that here we have to be careful to maintain the healthy of our financial system and making the right choices. What mean? That we cannot bail out energy sector or sector that are not anymore competitive. You know that in our cost report, we have found out that next year, 1,200 gigawatts will operate more costly if we are to substitute all that energy with new renewable plant. So this is another lesson, because now we have in a different stage where the decreasing of renewables, and make clear that if you do the wrong choice to the conventional fuels, we are just creating stranded asset, and we are going to touch the healthy of our financial system.
Yeah. And in the last few months, we've seen, huge changes to energy systems due to lockdown and coronavirus. What have some of the lessons been for renewable power and integration? I'm thinking particularly of Europe, where we've seen very low demand for electricity and a much higher percentage of power coming from renewable sources. What have we learned?
So I think the main lesson is too evident. That we have heard voices say that the COVID-19 was going to destroy any further step in the direction of renewable energy. And from the beginning, we say that this was just going in another direction. This 5 months learned us that renewables have been proven as the most resilient way to produce energy. So not only the cleanest, but also the most resilient. And this is also important looking to the future, where we have to be a world where the energy system is more resilient to shocks. We have seen that entire sector have been stranded out just because of the volatility of the oil prices. So in front of the instability, volatility, all this kind of aspect, renewables were there. We have seen that the share of renewables in the producing of electricity has been growing in all parts of the world. So coal, oil, gas, they went down, and renewables has been the only sectors going up in the sharing of electricity produced. So I think that these are the two main lessons in my point of view.
Does that also present a challenge, though, with low electricity prices? and some construction delays. I mean, do low power prices present a sort of long-term challenge for new clean energy projects?
For nuclear, you mean?
For any renewable project.
For us, nuclear are no renewables. I understand that you are talking about renewables, and for us, at least for IRENA, nuclear is not a renewable source of energy. Now, in the long term, what we think is that we have to take into consideration the path before the pandemic. So the market was very, very much clear, where in the last 8 years, we have seen the installed capacity of renewables systemically outpace the traditional one. In 2019, 72% of installed capacity was renewable. 35% of the total installed capacity was renewables. So what does it mean? That this will remain because the competitiveness of the different sector is there, and renewables can still improve, the other not, or at least at less measure. The only question that we have now, and what does the stimulus could be able to, is to accelerate this path. Because as you have seen in our planet scenario, so what is going on, including the new commitment, is not able to put us in line with the Paris Agreement goals. So what we have to do is to accelerate something that was already happening. So I don't see danger. Naturally, if we do the wrong choices, the danger is there, but it's especially a danger for the country. They are going to make the wrong choice because they will be out of the future market and they will just produce stranded assets that I don't think is the most economically way to proceed.
Yeah. Now, in the report, in your remarks just now, you mentioned this figure of $2 trillion per year. That's, as you said, this sort of really the needed level of investment. Where do you think that funding should come from? Should it be public, private, both? Where do you think the finance will emerge from?
Naturally, it should be both public and private investment in this case. And naturally, it could be very important, is one of the criteria that we build up in the report, that you put in place policies that may leverage private investment. And there are, money is naturally important. We envisage that we can have a leverage of 3-4 times of private money from public money. But what's important to know is if you make the right choice, the right sign, the private company receive the right sign, they will going to invest. If you are in the stimulus, working on the grids, so working on making them more flexible, more interconnected, more smarter, if we can say in a word. If we will build the necessary net for the cars, for the electric cars, so the company will understand that the line is there, the path is clear, and all will invest. So the money will come where the government will show clearly where is the way to go. So that's the reason for, please.
In your report, which I've got here on my iPad, you outline some of the short-term measures as well as the longer-term measures that you recommend. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the short-term measures for the 2021-2023 period. Here you mention carbon pricing, climate targets linked to any bailout funds from governments, as well as safeguarding renewable energy projects that are facing construction delays. And I was wondering if you could talk in a bit more detail about what your specific wish list is in terms of measures that you would like to see governments take just in the next couple of years to make this transition happen.
if I could say in a very few words, naturally, in the reports, you will see that we will group this possibly suggestion for policy measure for governments in the ambition, the public intervention, investment in power sector, heating and cooling, in transport, in employment, industry, access. So all these measures will work together. I think that are very important, the socioeconomic measures, so that we, in safeguarding the actual jobs, we also put in place the instrument to make possible the move from the traditional energy sector to the new energy sector. My point of view, this is very important. And as I was telling you before, infrastructure, the clear sign we are moving to provide an energy system that is not anymore centralized and fossil fuel focused, but we are going for a decentralized system that is taking into account the role of the consumer, taking into consideration the way how we can add more easily the renewables into the system. So for me, all the policies are relevant, and I will suggest you to look in depth to our report. But these are possibly the item that can make the difference, that can make clear to the private world, the private company, private investor, here is the way, it's very clear.
And I also wanted to ask a little bit about that job slide that you put up, which was quite striking. It sort of outlined which types of projects create how many jobs. What are the skills that are needed for these jobs? And is there a retraining program that needs to be part of the any jobs program?
That's absolutely necessary. You remember, I think it was our I don't know if I can go there.
To that slide?
If this I'm trying to go this way. No.
Okay, that should be visible now for the audience.
You see, yeah, you can see that the difference. And so this could be a guidance for government to organize the reskill training, but also is to provide, if possible, the necessary policy to make the industry be ready to provide the goods that are necessary to move in a direction. Because sometimes also we want to move faster. There are some bottleneck in the production of certain goods. For example, in our time, electrolyzer is one of the goods that are necessary for green hydrogen. But we cannot think that the production of electrolyzers can pass from 1 to 100 in 1 year. So we have to put in place the policies, in this case, the support for the company that are producing the electrolyzer, making possible to make the production growing, facilitating the decreasing of cost, and then the more demand for them. So it's a complex way where it's not only moving from a coal-related plant to the new plant. It's also the industrial system that has to be tuned to this new reality and work together.
Yeah. I have a few more questions, but I also want to invite the audience to keep submitting your questions. Many of you already have. In just a minute, we will turn to audience Q&A, and thank you for the questions you've already put in. Francesco, I just wanted to ask first, at the moment, we see so many countries thinking of stimulus measures. Some countries have already introduced stimulus measures that include green energy components. In other countries, that discussion is still underway about what should the shape of the stimulus be. What examples do you see that are positive examples, specific concrete programs that are already starting to be implemented as a result of coronavirus and the recession that give you grounds for optimism? What are some good examples that you can share with us?
One could be very close to us is the European Union, the European Green Deal. We will see at the end the best where it will bring us, but it's very promising. Also because there are two elements that I love it. And special one is the just transition. So that is clear that the idea of solidarity, cooperation among the European country, but also between Europe and the rest of the world is one of the important feature of that Green Deal. Because I think that the pandemic has taught us that we cannot come out from that if we are not all working together. And this happened also for the climate. So the climate challenges, we have all to work together. So it's very important that solidarity and cooperation are always in our plan. And the EU Green Deal, for the time being, is very respectful of this. We have to see, naturally, what will happen with the hydrogen strategy and with the flexibility of the energy system strategy that is going to come, I think, in the first or second week of July. But we have other good examples. We have Canada that has put in place this large employer emergency finance facility that is related to the climate-related disclosure reports. So this is also important for operation in environmental sustainability. We have France that has accelerated implementation of sustainable mobility package. We have Spain, thanking to the continuous push of the Vice Prime Minister Teresa Rivera, that are going for 100% for climate neutrality, carbon neutrality in 2050, and 100% renewable. So this is impressive. Korea, that are going also to have some kind of a new Green Deal. The UAE, also the country from where I'm speaking here from, is that is this two-phase recovery plan that is investing in digital economy, renewables, electric cars, and food security. We have Israel that has published their strategy in energy and water infrastructure that's taking into account of renewables. We have Switzerland, Chile, Iceland. China has been extended a vehicle purchase tax exemption that is important to have in this particular period. India also extend the project application deadlines for renewable project. So there are many good examples. So Japan, Portugal have announced economic support in the case of Japan. And also Portugal is looking to environmental friendly project as part of the recovery, including 1 gigawatt of solar hydrogen plant. It is also important that Portugal is moving that direction that we love to hear. So we think that green hydrogen could have a important contribution in the way forward to 2050. So we like when you see countries that are already investing or promoting investment in green hydrogen.
Wow, that's a very long list of positive examples. That's quite encouraging. We have a tremendous number of audience questions. Thank you so much. And we'll go ahead and start trying to get through these. First, one that asks, what is IRENA's strategy for stimulating green growth in some of the most vulnerable third world economies that will be affected worst by the current crisis? How do you think about these most vulnerable countries?
You know that IRENA, I think this has been the first word that I pronounced in my new capacity, will have as priority in his work the poorest part of the planet, I mean the LDCs and the cities around the world. We have already started in this last week to hear from African countries, from all the small islands. We will continue with dozen countries to understand what we can do for them in this particular period. We have been working for them in setting their strategies. We have also assessed the potentials in terms of renewable energies on many of these countries. And we are trying to link the knowledge part of the work of IRENA, that has been the predominant part until now, but also being more closer to the ground, is what we are doing with this initiative of the Climate Investment Platform. We have grouped our membership, that is 160 countries plus the European Union, plus 23 countries in transition, I think 161, sorry, and in 14 group. And for all these 14 groups, we have created digital platform where we are receiving ideas from all our membership. And has been impressive that in a few weeks, we have received now more than 200 ideas to be conceptualized in terms of possible bankable projects. And we will go from the next year. Unfortunately, the pandemic has delayed this project to organize our investment forum. In the investment forum, we will also bring the experience that we are maturing in supporting 110 countries with UNDP under the climate promise in raising ambition in the NDCs. And also concerning the partner, the request to be partner with CIP has been growing exponentially. Now we have more than 200, including major multilateral banks like the World Bank and others, private companies, a development agency, also NGOs. And so this group of partners will be called to be part of this investment forum and trying to facilitate the matching between what the country needs and the financial resources that are available globally. And working with the young people, we have also considered to have in our investment forum, so also put proposal through our web platform for having the startup session of the investment forum, where we're trying to bring the ideas of the youngest and trying to find means to have these ideas become a reality. So we have, in some way, we have a comprehensive strategy going from the knowledge basis to the work on the ground.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions here about carbon pricing, so I'll read two of them. The first is, what role can carbon pricing play in the energy transition, both domestically and in terms of international carbon markets? And a second question on carbon tax. The question is, I understand the EU is considering a carbon border adjustment tax. What is IRENA's view on this? How do you strike the right balance between carbon taxation and a barrier to free trade?
So naturally, it's up to our membership to decide domestically or regionally what kind of measures they think will better fit on their own system. The fact is that we need a more honest price. Our first call is for moving away the fossil fuel subsidies. You know, you can work on prices with taxes and subsidies, so you can use the side that you like to have an impact on prices. In my point of view, the first things to do is to move the fossil fuel subsidy away from our economic system. Then other step could be possible. It depends on the reality of the social acceptance of the measures. I think this could be a good moment if country wish to make a carbon tax, because now with the oil price going down, this could be socially the best moment. But it's up to the country to move around the price. We think that we have to stop subsidies to the fossil fuel world.
Right, that's quite clear. So you're saying that it could be a good moment potentially for carbon taxation given the low oil price. We've got lots more questions here. I'm going to read two out at a time. One question is, what is your position on requests for bailouts coming from the airlines and other brown sectors? Is it fair to bail them out and not give a similar investment into renewables and energy efficiency? And then a second question is, when comparing IRENA's report with the IEA's special report, which was published last week, where do key messages of both reports align and agree, and where do they disagree? So that's two questions on the bailouts, such as for airlines, and then the differences between the IEA recommendations and the IRENA recommendations.
Concerning the airlines, I think that the airline transportation is an important sector that provides for a lot of jobs. The only thing I can say that any bailouts measures for the airlines should be subject to conditionality. So it's possible, in my point of view, to support the companies to get out from the crisis that has impacted them very much. But this support has to be linked to conditionality. I think that a country as France and other has already started to work in this respect. Concerning the main difference between our report and the EIA one, I think that it's good that the two agencies representative a large number of countries in the world, and we, as IRENA, we represent globally. We can say we have a global constituency coming at this time with a report, both suggesting that we have to go for the accelerating the energy transformation. I don't want to enter in many technical details on the difference. I will leave this game to you. Possibly, if the only difference that I wish to point out in some case is that for us, for example, CCUS is not so important. We don't believe that the stimulus package has to pay any attention on CCUS because it's required a lot of capital, a lot of management issues are related to CCUS, and I don't think that public money has to be used anyway to encourage that technology. That could be a useful instrument for a limited cases. So this, I think, is one of the main differences. Naturally, in our report, you will not find any suggestion for going to nuclear or big or small plant. And this, I think, is obvious because in our statute, nuclear is not considered to be a renewable way to produce energy. I think that this could be enough for the time being.
And we've got a couple of questions here about energy storage and power prices. I'm just going to pick out two of them. One is, please talk about the storage issues associated with renewables. What are the options in your view? And another on power prices. What is your view on short and medium-term power prices in Europe? Do you expect a downward pressure on power prices? And how do you think the intermittency issue will be addressed?
Concerning this last question, I will come naturally to the other one. I think that the energy system has been proven capable to absorb a large quantity of electricity produced by renewables in this crisis. So intermittency has been an excuse for too long time. Naturally, we have to improve our capacity to make the system to be more flexible, interconnected, to accept a larger share of renewables. But there are countries that have producing their electricity for more than 50%. There are countries that are going for 100% renewables. There are countries that are already 100% renewables. Naturally, sometimes it's this due to the fact that they have an hydropower system that is strong enough and support them on this, as ensuring flexibility and storage capacity. We have also seen that as the storage prices are falling down dramatically, and there are sectors that we couldn't believe to be easily electrified to renewable, they are starting to be electrified to renewable. So I think that, and also there is hydrogen, clean hydrogen, it could be a source of storage and also fuel. So it's this dual component that could be very, very important in the future. So I don't think that intermittency could be an alibi to delay, to move faster in the direction of a system where renewables will play the major part.
And then there was also a question there about power prices in Europe.
So may you repeat literally, because it was attached to something else, the power prices.
Yes. It was, what is your view on the short and medium term power prices in Europe? Do you expect a downward pressure on power prices?
Inevitably, if the system will move to a cleaner energy system that is more economical, as we have said, because renewables are becoming more competitive, still there is room for decreasing their cost. So naturally, if you are going to that direction where the demand is satisfied by a supply, where there is more renewables, naturally the price will be not moving up it will moving not up. It could be, we can think about the fact that they will be there or they will go down slowly. But the question is not the price as such. The question is the risk associated to the price. So how much I can have a contract, a long-term contract where I deal with energy in the long term. So the confidence that the price remains stable. And this guarantee, this more confidence could be only related to the renewable energy world.
Thank you. There's lots more questions here, so thanks to everyone who's submitting them. Is IRENA getting interest from governments, in better understanding how they can enable the generation of new jobs through the energy transition? Essentially, are governments actually engaging with the practicalities of creating these new jobs?
Yes, absolutely yes. We are collaborating with all the countries. Some naturally need substantial support from us, and we are responding to everyone. We are responding in terms of capacity building program. We are working also with our partner, which to mention, because IRENA work a lot also thanks to the support of countries like Denmark, like Norway, like Netherlands, like the European Union, our main donors that allow us to fit our program to the needs of the country. So we are really working in all aspects: mitigation, adaptation, capacity building, with our now for supporting them in coming with a bankable project. So there are many areas where we at IRENA are trying to play our role. I repeat, is the lead role of supporting country in the energy transformation. So it's a wide basket of competencies.
Thank you. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have time for today, unfortunately, but we've covered a lot of ground. Thank you, Francesco, for your time. I've learned a lot and really enjoyed discussing everything from carbon pricing to green hydrogen and everything in between. So that's it for me. I do have a couple of housekeeping notes here. You will be asked to take a short survey following this. This webinar will also be available on demand for a month on the FT Live website. And please keep an eye out for future webinars in the FT Digital Dialogues series. I'd like to thank IRENA, our sponsor, and thank you, Francesco, for joining us today. And I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. I will love it.
Thank you.